Most people are completely wasting this new moon, not because they're doing it wrong, but because they don't understand what it actually is. And the crazy part is, the people who think they're doing everything right are the ones missing it the most. The new moon portal is now open. This is something you can't miss. And if you don't see what's really happening right now, you'll walk straight past something that only shows up for a very short window. What's actually happening right now is something that most people will benefit from, but only if they're aware of how to move through it. You've seen this before. New moon, fresh start, set intentions. But this time, it doesn't feel the same. There's no urgency, no pressure to figure everything out, no emotional rush pushing you to act. That's because this isn't about chasing change. It's about becoming unavailable for what no longer fits. Before, your new beginnings were driven by something: excitement, pressure, the need to move quickly. This one feels neutral, almost matter-of-fact, like something has already been decided internally and you're just becoming aware of it. You're not trying to become someone new. You're recognizing what no longer aligns and naturally stepping away from it. When you stop chasing outcomes, you start choosing what actually fits. This creates a quieter kind of power. You don't need to force anything or prove anything. Things either make sense to you now or they don't, and you're okay with that. But there's a subtle shift happening underneath this that most people won't notice, and it's what separates people who move forward from those who stay where they are. Alignment right now doesn't feel intense or emotional. It feels simple. You're not overthinking certain things anymore. Decisions that used to take days of back and forth now feel obvious, even if they're uncomfortable. There's less internal negotiation, less trying to convince yourself, less searching for the right answer. You just see things clearly. Alignment isn't when everything feels good, it's when everything becomes clear. One of the biggest signs is that you're no longer looking for validation the way you used to. You're not waiting for confirmation or reassurance before you move. You already know what makes sense, even if you haven't acted on it yet. And that clarity changes how you move. You stop reacting to uncertainty and start moving from understanding. The moment you stop asking for permission is the moment things start shifting. But even with that clarity, there are still things that quietly pull people back into old patterns without them realizing it. The first is comfort disguised as patience. A lot of people believe they're waiting for the right moment, but if you look closely, that moment already feels clear. They're just not acting on it. It feels responsible to wait. It sounds smart to say you're being patient, but in reality, it's often hesitation. You're delaying something that already makes sense because taking action would force a change you're not fully ready to face yet. Waiting can look wise, but it's often just hesitation in disguise. There's a difference between timing and avoidance. Timing feels natural, like things are lining up and you're moving with it. Avoidance feels like you're constantly almost ready, but never actually moving. And right now, a lot of people are stuck in that almost. The second is identity lag. This is where things get more subtle, because on the inside, you've already changed. The way you think, what you tolerate, what you expect from yourself, all of that has shifted. But your external life hasn't caught up yet. So you end up repeating patterns that don't reflect who you are anymore. You keep making decisions based on an older version of yourself, even though you can feel that it doesn't match you. That's where that strange disconnect comes from. You don't feel like yourself in your own routine. You don't feel stuck because nothing changed. You feel stuck because your life hasn't caught up to who you've become. And the longer that gap stays open, the more uncomfortable things start to feel. The third is invisible loyalty, and this is the one most people don't recognize at all. You hold yourself back, not because you don't know what to do, but because fully stepping into it would change your relationships, your environment, or the way people see you. It's not always obvious. It shows up as hesitation, as second-guessing, as downplaying your own growth so things don't feel too different. Because a part of you knows that if you move forward fully, certain dynamics might shift, and that's uncomfortable. Sometimes the reason you're not moving forward isn't confusion, it's that moving forward changes more than just you. So instead, you stay slightly smaller, slightly quieter, slightly more aligned with what's familiar. But this energy doesn't let that go unnoticed. It brings it into focus in a way that's hard to ignore, because once you see it clearly, you have to make a decision. And once these three things become obvious, the hesitation, the misalignment, the quiet holding back, you start to realize that what's happening right now isn't random at all. It's something you've been moving toward for a while, whether you realized it or not. This isn't the kind of shift that targets people who are already in crisis. It doesn't go after the obvious problems or the situations that are clearly falling apart. It goes after something much quieter. It hits the people who are comfortable, people who have built something stable enough that they don't question it, people who aren't struggling but aren't fully aligned either, people who have learned how to exist in something that works even if it doesn't feel right. That's where this energy lands the hardest. Because when you're in a difficult situation, you already know something needs to change. But when you're in a comfortable plateau, it's easy to stay there for a long time without ever challenging it. You tell yourself it's fine. You tell yourself it's enough. You adjust to it. Until something cuts through that, this new moon doesn't create chaos, it creates clarity. A moment where you look at something in your life and see it without all the explanations and justifications you've been using to make it make sense. It can be your work, a routine, a situation, even a mindset you've been carrying. And for a second, you don't rationalize it. You just see it clearly. And the thought that follows is simple, but it's undeniable. You can't keep doing this the same way. The most dangerous place isn't struggle, it's comfort that disconnects you from yourself. And now, it's time for today's comment of the day. You are a decision away from a beautiful life. We often imagine change as something distant, something that takes years, perfect timing, or the right conditions. But sometimes, the shift really does start with one clear decision. Not everything changes overnight, but direction does. And once direction changes, everything else starts to follow. Thank you for sharing this strong reminder. Most people are used to approaching their life like it's something that needs to be optimized. Every decision has to be the best one. Every move has to lead somewhere. Every step needs to be calculated, thought through, justified. There's this constant pressure to make sure you're not wasting time, not missing opportunities, not making the wrong choice. And on the surface, that sounds smart. But this kind of energy doesn't respond to that. In fact, the more you try to overthink it, the more disconnected you become from what's actually clear. Because when everything becomes a strategy, you stop listening to what's already obvious. You start second-guessing things that don't need to be questioned. You start looking for better options when the right one is already in front of you. You delay action, not because you don't know what to do, but because you're trying to make sure it's perfect before you move. The need to optimize everything is often just a fear of committing to anything. And that's where people lose momentum without realizing it. They think they're being careful, they think they're being intentional. But what's really happening is they're staying in a constant state of preparation, never actually stepping into anything fully. This new moon doesn't reward that mindset. It responds to directness, not recklessness, not impulsiveness, but honesty. The kind of honesty where you stop pretending you don't know what's already clear to you. Because the truth is, most of the time, you already know your next move. It's not hidden. It's not something you have to discover. It's just something you've been avoiding because it feels too simple, too uncomfortable, or too real. Most people think control comes from thinking more, planning more, preparing more. But real control comes from being clear enough to act without needing endless confirmation. It's the difference between trying to manage every detail and trusting what's already in front of you. And the more you lean into that, the more you start noticing something subtle. The path forward doesn't feel complicated anymore. It feels obvious. And that's when you realize this isn't about figuring everything out. It's about finally moving on what you've been seeing all along. This is where most people completely misunderstand what this kind of energy is actually doing. They feel it, they recognize it, and they immediately label it as something positive without realizing there's a second side to it that's just as powerful. Because this energy right now is very imaginative, very fluid, very open. It expands your thinking, it makes you see possibilities, it pulls you into ideas that feel bigger than your current reality. And on the surface, that feels like a good thing. But that's exactly where the trap is. Because the risk here isn't that you won't dream big enough. The risk is that you'll stay in the dream. You start thinking about what your life could look like, how things could change, who you could become, what you could build. And it feels real for a moment. It feels exciting. It feels possible. It feels like you're getting somewhere. But nothing actually moves. Because thinking about something and deciding on something are not the same thing. A vision can inspire you, but only a decision can change your life. A vision floats. It expands, it shifts, it evolves depending on how you feel. One day it's clear, the next day it's slightly different. It adapts to your mood, your environment, your doubts. A decision doesn't do that. A decision lands. It's fixed. It doesn't negotiate with how you feel the next day. It doesn't change because you woke up less motivated. It doesn't soften just because something became uncomfortable. And under this kind of energy, a lot of people stay in that floating state because it feels good there. It feels safe. You get to imagine a different life without having to fully step into it. But the longer you stay there, the more disconnected you become from actually making it real. At some point, your vision stops being inspiration and starts becoming avoidance. And that's the moment where things either shift or stall. Because this energy is powerful, but it's only powerful if you anchor it. If you take one thing, just one, that you've been thinking about for a long time, something that keeps coming back, something that hasn't left your mind no matter how much time has passed, and you stop treating it like an idea, and you decide it. You decide that this is happening. That's the difference. There's one thing you can do during this moment that cuts through all the overthinking, all the waiting, all the uncertainty, and it's much simpler than people expect, but it's also something most people won't do, even though it takes less than a minute. And it's this. You say it out loud, not in your head, not written down, not imagined. Without trying to make it perfect, you speak the thing you want as if it has already happened. You don't ask for it. You don't hope for it. You don't frame it as something you're trying to reach. You say it like it's already yours. I have this. I am this. My life looks like this. And you let yourself hear it. Because there's a difference between thinking something and hearing yourself say it. When it stays in your head, it's easy to dismiss. It's abstract. It feels like a thought, something flexible, something that can be changed or ignored. But when you say it out loud, something shifts. There's a different weight to something your own voice is willing to claim. Your brain processes that differently. It's not just an idea anymore. It becomes something you've expressed, something you've declared, something that now exists outside of just your internal dialogue. And that creates a kind of imprint. You hear your own voice saying it, and that sound doesn't just disappear. It registers. It creates a memory. It starts to blur the line between what feels possible and what feels distant. Because now, instead of it being something you're imagining, it's something you've already started identifying with. And that's where the change begins. One of the biggest reasons people miss what's happening right now is because they're looking for visible change. They're waiting for something external to move, something obvious to happen, some kind of shift in their situation that confirms that things are different. They expect new opportunities, new people, new outcomes, something they can point to and say, "This is it, this is the change." But that's not where this is happening. This shift is happening in something much quieter and much more important. It's happening in your standards. The way you look at things is changing. The way you respond to things is changing. What you're willing to accept, tolerate, engage with, and give your time to is being recalibrated, and it's happening without needing anything outside of you to change yet. You might notice that certain things that used to feel normal now feel slightly off. Not dramatically wrong, not enough to create a reaction, but enough to make you pause. You look at something the same way you always have, but this time it doesn't sit right. You hear something, experience something, consider something, and there's a quiet part of you that just doesn't align with it anymore. And that's the shift. Not loud, not dramatic, but very real. Your life doesn't change when your circumstances change, it changes when your standards do. Because once your standard shifts, everything else starts to reorganize around it, whether you try to control it or not. You don't have to force yourself to leave certain situations. You don't have to push things away. You don't have to make dramatic decisions overnight. You simply stop engaging the same way. And over time, that changes everything. You give less energy to things that don't match you. You stop entertaining conversations that don't interest you. You stop considering options that you would have previously accepted just because they were available. And without realizing it, you start creating space. Not by trying to change your life, but by no longer participating in what doesn't fit. There's something very rare about this moment that most people are going to completely overlook, because it doesn't look like an opportunity in the way people expect. There's no chaos pushing you, no situation forcing your hand, no breakdown that makes it impossible to stay where you are, no dramatic ending that demands a reaction. Everything can look stable, everything can feel manageable, nothing is necessarily falling apart, and that's exactly why people miss it. Because most people only recognize change when it's loud. They wait for pressure, for urgency, for something that makes the decision for them. They wait until staying the same becomes unbearable, until they're forced to move, until there's no other option left. But this isn't that kind of moment. This is something much cleaner. It's an opportunity to move forward without needing to be pushed, to shift direction without needing something to break first, to choose something new without needing to escape something old. And that's rare. Most people change when they have to. Very few change when they simply can. And that's the difference between a temporary shift and a lasting one. When you move because you're forced to, there's always a part of you that's reacting. There's always something unresolved, something you're running from, something that pulled you out of your position. But when you move from clarity, without pressure, without chaos, without urgency, it comes from a completely different place. It's stable, it's intentional, it's clean. You're not escaping anything. You're stepping into something. And that's what this new moon is offering. Not intensity, not disruption, not some overwhelming wave of change, but a quiet opening. And if you're still here, still watching, I truly appreciate that more than you think. You don't need to rush after this. You don't need to force a decision or prove anything to yourself. Just take what's already clear to you and respect it, because that's where everything starts shifting. And whatever direction this takes you next, trust that you're not behind, you're not late, and you're not missing anything. You're exactly where you need to be to move forward. And from here, things can only start making more sense.